Prabhupada Ki Jai. Today we're going to continue speaking about how Maya affects us, and I wanted to begin by talking about something I was just thinking about, the importance of being steady. And we'll begin with Kirtan, but I want to begin speaking about why it's important to be steady in devotional service. We had read maybe 3 weeks ago a letter by Prabhupada where he spoke about gaps in our bhakti, and we had spoken about that. And one aspect of that was just being distracted, but also another aspect is being up and down, both in our sadhana and service. And I want to talk about that, what might cause that problem. But first, we will do Kirtan. Hare Krishna. Kirtan, Kirtan, Kirtan. More Kirtan. We need more Kirtan. Hare Krishna. More Kirtan, more Kirtan. We always need more Kirtan, right? Never enough Kirtan. Krishna Chaitanya. Radha Madhava Kunjabi Hari Radha Madhava Kunjabi Hari Gopi Janavallabha Girivardhari Gopi Janavallabha Girivardhari Yashodanandana Braja Jana Ranjana Jasodanandana Braja Jana Ranjana Jasodanandana Braja Jana Ranjana Jamuna Tira Panachari Jamuna Tira Panachari Radha Madhava Kunjabi Hari Radha Madhava Kunjabi Hari Gopi Janavallabha Girivardhari Gopi Janavallabha Girivardhari Shodanandana Braja Jana Ranjana Shodanandana Braja Jana Ranjana Shodanandana Braja Jana Ranjana Jasodanandana Braja Jana Ranjana Jamuna Tira Banachari Jamuna Tira Banachari Radha Madhava Kunjabi Hari Radha Madhava Kunjabi Hari Gopi Janavallabha Girivardhari Gopi Janavallabha Girivardhari Jasodanandana Braja Jana Ranjana Yashodanandana Braja Janaranjana Jasodanandana Braja Janaranjana Jasodanandana Braja Janaranjana Jamuna Tira Vana Chari Jamuna Tira Vana Chari Radha Madhava Punjabi Hari Radha Madhava Punjabi Hari Sisi Radha Madhava Ki Jai Giriraj Maharaj Ki Jai Go Premanandi Hari Hari Bol. I hope you all had a nice Govardhan Puja. And you ate a hill's worth of prasadam, and now you're recovering. Hare Krishna. So, on my screen, my video keeps starting and stopping. Is that the way you see it? And is there any problems? I mean, we have problems, but I mean, any problems? Any problems in the audio or video? I will make the assumption that everything is fine. I want to begin this class with a story about the importance of being steady and how steadiness is a symptom of bhakti. Some of you may remember the story. I've told it before. But I find that, we need to say things over again because we forget. And also, yes, you are freezing. And it's not even freezing, yeah. It's, I'm not sure what the freezing is caused by. It could be the internet is up and down. As long as you can hear me, that's most important. So, there was a man, he was the owner of a newspaper in the country of Mauritius. And a lot of the people in Mauritius who are Hindus, they know something about the Vedas and Hinduism, and this man knew something, but as is common, what they know is not the right thing always. So in the battle of Kurukshetra, he pointed out to Prabhupada that Arjuna's son was killed, and Arjuna was lamenting the loss of his son. And in the Gita, Krishna says, the wise people, they don't lament for the living or the dead. It's a sign of transcendence. You don't become elated when things are great, and you don't lament when things are bad. You're steady. It's like Krishna told Arjuna, one who's steady in happiness and distress, then they're in the right position for spiritual life. They're qualified. And so it's both a practice and also a symptom. So, yeah. The freezing of the video may stop, it may not. I have to try to figure out. Maybe somebody can help me. On the screen, it has different amounts of kilobytes that are being uploaded, and it keeps changing. Can't figure out why. Anyway, so this man said to Srila Prabhupada, Arjuna could not have been a pure devotee because when his son died, he was lamenting, and a pure devotee would not lament for the living or the dead. It sounds, in a sense, like a reasonable argument. But of course, we know Arjuna is a pure devotee, but at the same time, what he said could be seen as true in the sense that Arjuna now has been put into Maya or illusion in order that Krishna can speak Bhagavad Gita. But essentially, Arjuna is not an illusion. It's not his normal condition. So that would make sense. Okay, he's lamenting. But Prabhupada, he took it in a different way. He didn't say, oh, well, that was, Arjuna was, well, actually, at that point, he had already heard Bhagavad Gita. So that what I said, take back what I said. So now Arjuna is supposed to be in his state as a pure devotee. So yeah, that makes sense. So Prabhupada said two things. The first thing Prabhupada said was that if you lose your son, it's normal to lament. So he was indicating that even someone who's spiritually advanced, when some kind of tragedy like that happens, they will be affected. It's natural. I mean, it's not that we have no emotion. That just like we see if a dear devotee dies, everyone's affected. We lost someone dear to us. That person was important to us, etc. So we're not like stones. So Prabhupada he wasn't giving so much validity to that, neither laments for the living or the dead, as a symptom of a pure devotee. And then he went on, he made a second point, so the first point, that lamentation it's natural. But he made the second point, which is what I want to talk about. He said that Arjuna didn't stop fighting. He didn't give up his duty. So in spite of the fact that his son died, he was steady in his duty. He wasn't affected by it. Maybe affected, you could say, Prabhupada is saying, well, naturally, emotionally, we'll be affected, but that didn't stop him from being steady in his duty. The fact that he was steady in his duty was proof that he was Krishna's pure devotee. So I think that's significant, and I wanted to mention that. And the reason I wanted to talk about this, at least briefly, as maybe a common or potential form of how Maya affects us, is that it's quite common in my work as a counselor and also just as a teacher to run into situations where devotees become unsteady. They might just have periods of very little Krishna consciousness. And sometimes in those periods, they have some service and they don't do it. They it's like everything. They throw out the baby in the bathwater. Everything just goes out there. Something happened in their life that has really disturbed them. And it's kind of like they just give up on the whole project of Krishna consciousness. And so Prabhupada, just like Krishna, stressed steadiness. And he really didn't like it when devotees were not steady, and he was depending upon us to be steady in our service. And so I don't think we should look at steadiness as something lightly, but I think we should see it, of course, as a practice, but also as a symptom that in spite of the ups and downs, we don't give up our service. We continue. Sometimes service is difficult. We will find someone that will replace us, maybe do a service that's better situated. That's reasonable. But we don't give up that service until we're replaced, or when things are difficult. Sometimes I've seen devotees. I've never done this myself, or at least not that I can remember in any serious way. But sometimes when things are difficult, a devotee, rather than taking shelter in sadhana and revving up their sadhana with better japa or more reading or more sangha, they take shelter of sense gratification. So they rev up the sense gratification. Oh, I'm so miserable, I can't deal with this. This, devotee treated me this way, or Maya is attacking me this way, or my mind is telling me this, my faith is weak, there's so many reasons that someone may become unsteady. And then rather than fight it, they take shelter in sense gratification, or take shelter in forgetting Krishna. Oh, devotional service is difficult. Sometimes devotees say, before I was a devotee, everything was fine. It wasn't fine. You were preparing to take a body, maybe as a human, maybe as an animal, and you were trying to be happy doing a million things. But sometimes that thought comes because, when you're trying to become a devotee, then you're facing material energy. You're trying to get out. If you're not a devotee, you're not trying to get out. So it may seem somewhat easier, an easier life. You just get up, drink your coffee, go to work, no expectation of being spiritually advanced. Do your work, come home, throw the TV on or social media, make your dinner, eat it, watch some entertainment, go to sleep. Yeah, well, peaceful life, no problem. And become a devotee, like, oh, my mind, and I have so many desires and so many anarthas, and before you're a devotee, you weren't either aware or maybe aware, not concerned. Your goals weren't, you didn't have goals for this level of purity. So naturally, when you're trying to become more pure and you're taking on responsibilities, which can be difficult, yeah, it can be harder. And so I've seen some devotees, aside that one ill-fated strategy is just, more sense gratification. This Krishna consciousness is too difficult. I need more sense gratification. Which, in some sense, may be true a little bit, that maybe you are being too austere with yourself and you can't maintain it. So that could be true. But I'm talking about just immersing oneself in sense gratification as a solution. Or worse still, as I mentioned, trying to forget Krishna consciousness. It's caused all my problems. Let me just forget it. And then they don't want to talk to devotees. They don't want to associate because that would remind them of Krishna. It sounds strange, right? But Maya will place that seed in the head of us, some of us, sometimes, that Krishna consciousness is actually the cause of your problems. And if you just forget Krishna, you'll be fine. And if you just stop doing devotional service, you'll be fine. Now, I don't think that's common for everyone, but I'm only mentioning it because I've seen it more than once. And I think the obvious answer or solution is that if we have a problem, it's a problem either in execution of devotional service or an understanding of devotional service. Now, I want to talk about something that I think will clarify this a little bit, because sometimes it is true that a devotee is too austere, too renounced beyond their ability to be steady. And so that's one reason we're not steady. And that's one reason they may gravitate towards sense gratification, because they renounced it and they weren't on a level where they could renounce that much. Because renunciation ultimately has to be a byproduct of your Krishna consciousness, specifically your taste. So if you try to renounce beyond your taste or beyond what's natural, even though you want to renounce that way because it makes sense to do it, or you have a desire to do it, but if you don't have the qualification to do it, it can backfire. And then those of us who have a mentality which is kind of all or nothing, either you're in first place or you don't play the game. So some of us have that mentality. So it's kind of like, if I can't be a pure devotee, why should I even try to be Krishna conscious? And so sometimes they just, why should I even try this? I can't be a pure devotee. I just give it up. I don't know if you've seen that. I don't know if you have that mentality, but it's a perfectionist mentality. If it's not perfect, why do it? If it's not perfect, then it's not worth doing. So we've talked about that a little bit, that you don't evaluate perfection in devotional service on a material level. And really your perfection is that you keep trying. And so that's important. the effort trying. But what I would say in regards to this is that we all have to think, what is it that I have to do? What is that I have to avoid? How is it that I have to understand myself and my application of Krishna consciousness in a way that I can be steady? That steadiness may mean that I'm steady on a lower platform than I want to be, but on that lower platform I can be steady. Just like sometimes we tell somebody who's beginning to chant a number of rounds that you can maintain every day, rather than chant 8 one day, 0 for 2 days, 16 for 3 days, 800 for 4 days, 0 for a month, because that happens. Well, you can't chant 800 in a day. But you know what I'm saying. It's like just oscillating. And I'm really fired up. I'm going to do 64. I want to make up for the fact that I didn't chant any rounds last week. And then after I chant 64, wow, it was so hard. I'm so blown out. I don't want to chant japa for the next week. So pick a number that you can maintain every day. Yeah, okay, 4 rounds. I can do 4 rounds. But this is not for initiated devotees, but we're talking about somebody new. So that's the idea. So sometimes you have to look at your devotional service and your unsteadiness and ask yourself, why am I unsteady and what do I have to do to become steady? Maybe I'm engaged in a task that's just not my nature. Maybe I'm engaged in a task that is way beyond my austerity threshold. And so whenever I try to do it, eventually I burn out, I crash, I give it up. I go, stick my face in a bucket of sweet rice and just drown my sorrows in sweet rice. Maybe we could write a song. Drown your sorrows in a bucket of sweet rice. Have you ever done that? Actually, it works sometimes. Like you're really going through a difficult time and you eat some really good sweet rice. Sometimes it pulls you back together. But you know what I'm saying? Sometimes we give up. And so we don't want to put ourselves in a situation where where Krishna consciousness is so difficult for us. We've set goals that are so difficult that we keep becoming unsteady because we can't steadily maintain those goals. Now, listening to this, you might be thinking, well, is Mahatma Prabhu saying that I should chant less rounds and follow less principles? Well, obviously, if you're initiated, you've promised to chant a certain number of rounds and follow a certain number of principles. So we can't recommend that you do less, although sometimes it does happen that a guru in consultation with a disciple who's not able to follow may say, okay, for now, then do less and build up to more, because for some reason they're not able to maintain it. So that's more of an exception. But in other areas of your life, how much you're sleeping, how much service you're doing, the kind of service you're doing, the goals that you have, the kind of austerity you're doing, the level of renunciation you're trying to maintain in your life in general, things that you've renounced doing that maybe you could be doing in devotional service that are important for you because of your nature, things like that. So the goal, like the story we told the other day when Prabhupada was talking about a sannyasi who fell down, and he said, it doesn't matter, you can serve in any position. And one of the things we can understand is that Prabhupada meant if he's serving, then he's serving. So if he needs to give up his sannyas, not that it's recommended or encouraged. But in the ultimate end, Prabhupada's point was if he's serving steadily, if that's the best position for him, then fine, he can do that. So naturally, if you're a sannyasi, you don't think about getting married, or you shouldn't. But sometimes, if you become a sannyasi at an early age, and you get older, you may start thinking about marriage, that I'm not able to do this. And we could say, in a sense, before one would make any fall down because of that desire, He might, officially say, I have to give up my sannyas and get married, rather than just do something impetuous, have a impetuous love affair. So Prabhupada accepted that. And ultimately, he said it didn't matter what ashram you're in, if you're serving Krishna. But the point, and this is in the Bhagavatam, the point is, Prabhupada said, whatever position is best to fight with Maya. So what's the best position for you? In this case, in this discussion, would be what's the best position for you to be steady? And so, okay, if I adjust things this way and I'll be steady, I have to adjust this. I have my own stories. It's an interesting story. I remember, was it probably like 1978, 79? I was a Sankirtan leader in Los Angeles. There was maybe total of like 25 men. I was maybe 20 of them I was working with directly. I was in charge of planning where they would go on Sankirtan, and then I would also go out at least on the weekends. So, what was I saying? Oh, yeah. So I remember, Prabhupada had said, to be a Sankirtan leader is very precious. It's very valuable, very precious position. But my nature was I'd get bored. How should I say it? I think you can relate to this. If you ever find something really burdensome, boring, it's just, you don't want to do it. It's not interesting to you. It's not inspiring to you. But someone else loves it. I was just listening to a video the other day. It was a video of a conference that took place, maybe it was 1999. Maybe I think it was the first conference of women in ISKCON. I don't know the name of it. And a devotee's mother had met Prabhupada. She had helped Prabhupada form the BBT, the book trust. So they brought her in to talk about her experience with Prabhupada. And God, I keep forgetting what I'm going to say. I didn't sleep. I was up late last night. I couldn't sleep. Why was I talking about her? So she said, at that time, she'd been a lawyer for like 30, 40 years. And she explained that to everyone. So this is who I am, and this is what I do, and I've been a lawyer in California. And at that point, I think probably the oldest devotee there was probably 34, maybe. No, it's 1999. Well, maybe it was 19, I forget, but I think that the average age of the devotees was in their early 30s. So she said, I've been a lawyer longer than any of you have been alive. And then my first thought was, oh my God, that must have been really difficult. And she said, I loved every moment of it. And it just reminded me of something I knew, but it was good to be reminded that some people love doing what I hate doing. Some people find it interesting to do things that I just find burdensome and boring. And so I was a Sankirtan leader, which is very, very supposedly relishable position. But for me, it was relishable. But for me, organizing, managing, it wasn't interesting. I couldn't keep my mind focused on it. It was like, okay, just get it done so we can move on to something interesting or inspiring. Now, I know that sounds like, well, you should have been inspired, the Sankirtan leader, Sankirtan movement. Yeah. Okay, should. That's fine. But I used to think I would sit in my office having to manage everything, and I'd be thinking, I wish I were in Mayapur teaching. I was 27, 28, 29. And my mind was just in Mayapur teaching. I was dealing with the Sankirtan, but that's where my mind was. And I was Sankirtan leader for many years in several temples. I've been temple president 4.5 times because the half time was, let me see. So I was temple president in Vancouver, Johannesburg, Mauritius. Then I went back again to Mauritius. And then we had a preaching center in Austin. That was 5. And then for 2 weeks, Laguna Beach. So 5.5. Well, let's say 5 plus. And my experience as Sankirtan leader or temple president was I would lose, at a certain point, I would lose interest. It was like there was, the feeling, there was no inspiration in doing it. And so it was difficult to be steady because it wasn't really my dharma. Management and like that, it's okay, I can do it. But as a full-time service, teaching, explaining Krishna consciousness to new people, developing courses. You all know I do a video every day. How could you do a video every day? That's like crazy. And it's been over 3 years or 4 years or something. That's crazy. Because by nature, I always think of philosophically. So I'm always getting ideas and realizations. So it's actually very easy. And then I get an idea. I go into my studio and I turn the camera on. And, I have the idea fairly clear, and I just talk. I don't know exactly how it's going to come out, but it's quite easy for me to do it. I've never had to do a video over. I go, that wasn't good. Let's do it over. I just turn on the camera and do it. That's my nature. Now, obviously, not everybody could do that. And some people would be frightened to do that. They'd sit in front of a camera and go, I can't say anything. It's just the camera. Can you write out a script? I'll read it. And you give me a script and say, Mahatma Prabhu, can you read this? I go, no, I can't read it. Well, just read it. But it won't come out right because I'm not used to that. It's not my nature. So anyway, you understand what I'm saying. So the point is that when I was doing these services of management, it was about 2 years before I would tell the authorities, I can't do this anymore. It's just, it's like I don't have it's like you're walking up a stairway and you're exhausted, and it's like, the 108th stairway, and you're trying to get to the top, and you say, I can't go any further. I don't have the energy. It's exactly what I felt. That's the best way I could say it. I didn't have the energy to do that service. And this kept happening in that service. Temple president, I shouldn't go. After 2 years, I just say, I can't do this anymore. And I never stayed in charge of a temple for more than 2 years, or sometimes sometimes a year, just after a year. It's like, this is not me. I should be out teaching, not, organizing schedules and organizing this and organizing that is just not inspiring. Although it's inspiring for other people. They like doing it. They get ideas. They like executing them and so forth. So at a certain point, maybe it was 15 years ago or so, I began focusing on teaching. I said, this is what I'm going to do, because I understood this is my nature. And I understood anything else I do, I won't be steady. So I started doing that. And then I never burned out. And I'm still doing it. And so that shows that sometimes you have to investigate, am I not steady because I just haven't found my dharma, my service, my position? And so that definitely can be a reason. You're looking, where's your inspiration, and how you can use that inspiration in service. Then generally you'll find at that point you'll be steady or more steady or perfectly steady, or you'll do it your whole life. I love doing this. I could do this my whole life. I could do this for lifetimes. That should be the feeling. I've got this service. I've connected with my nature. I could do this for the next 100 lifetimes. I love this. Whatever it is. For you, it could be management. It could be, more artistic type things, dramas, writing, whatever it is. There's so many things. So I think that's important for all of us. Of course, then you're asking, well, how do I know? That's for another class. And if you go on my website, I don't know, finding your Dharma and the Mission of Prabhupada, I think there's on SoundCloud. And I think also my website, there's a little, a questionnaire you can answer, which helps you understand your nature. But usually as you get older, you start to notice that you gravitate more towards certain things. Like Indradyumna Swami, he's like festivals. It's always been Harinam Sankirtan and festivals has always been what he's loved to do. And he's still doing it. And the reason he's still doing it is because he loves doing it. So he could do it. He could do it for lifetimes. He probably would tell you, if I come back in my next life, I want to continue doing these festivals. It's his nature. He loves it. And he's created amazing festival programs. And it's helped so many people and engaged so many devotees and exposed Krishna consciousness to hundreds of thousands of people. Someone else, it's, by Sheshika Prabhu, it's book distribution. That's his heart. That's what makes him, like they say, what is it? What gets you out of bed in the morning? What do you wake up for? For some Gopal Krishna Maharaj, just open more temples. It's just expanding Krishna consciousness through various projects. That's what gets him up in the morning. And you look at what he's doing and say, how is he doing that? That's what he's good at. That's what he likes to do. That's where his inspiration is. It's not, he can build a temple. He's like, how do you build a temple? How do you do that? Where do you get the money? It's not a problem for him. Because when it's your nature, generally, you figure things out easily because that's how your mind works. If you're a manager, you figure things out easily. If you're not a manager, you can't figure things out. You have meetings that go on for weeks and you can't figure it out because you're not really a manager. It's not your nature. And if you get a good manager, he just comes in like 10 minutes. He says, this is what you should do. And everyone's like, oh, that's a good idea. How come we didn't think of that? Well, you're not managers. That's why. So this is real life. I'm not making this up. I have experience of this. So I think that's important for all of you to consider. What is it? What is that service? And then, of course, ashram. What ashram should I be in? Because sometimes you'll see a devotee who's unsteady, and the only reason they're unsteady is because they're in the wrong ashram. Of course, the problem is you can't easily change ashrams. You can't easily get out of Grihastha ashram. If you're a brahmachari and you say, I'm in the wrong ashram, I should get married, that's not a problem. If you're a brahmachari and say, I'm in the wrong ashram, I want to take sannyas. If you're qualified, that can be done. But when you're in the Grihastha ashram and you think, actually this is the wrong ashram, that's not the situation in which Prabhupada would want you to leave, unless your wife is agreeable and you're actually qualified and you wouldn't remarry if you left it. But that's the exception. But often, when devotees are unsteady, they need to look at these two things, your ashram and your varna. Are you in the wrong ashram or are you in the wrong varna? And often the case is, yes, I'm in the wrong ashram. That's why I'm unsteady. I'm in the wrong varna. That's why I'm unsteady. So that's important to look at. And I would like to emphasize, as Prabhupada did, that steadiness is extremely important in Krishna consciousness because it's that steadiness over a long period of time that's going to make a huge difference. But if you're going up and down, then one time you go down, you may never go up again. So, I know we all want to be up here, but our steady point may be down here. And I know for some of you, it's really hard to acknowledge that I can only be steady here because I want to be up here. So thank you, Christe, for finding your Dharma. I'll get to your comments soon. So I think this is important to realize that the point at which we become steady may not be the point where we want to be situated. It may be lower, unfortunately. It's like, I want to be up here, but when I try to be up here, it's too difficult. I sometimes then I bottom out and I have to climb my way back up. But instead of climbing up to a platform where I can be steady, I try to climb back up because this platform is attractive to me. This is where I want to be. But I'm not qualified yet. I don't have the I don't have the spiritual strength to be steady on that level. So sometimes we just have to find that point. We have to acknowledge and say, okay, I keep, if I'm a yo-yo, if I call this a yo-yo bhakta, although yo-yo probably has some Sanskrit equivalent. Yo-yo yum yum, Bhagavad Gita, yo-yo yum yum. But I don't mean it as Sanskrit. I mean it as an actual yo-yo, that little toy that you play like this, it goes up and down. So I sometimes have named devotees who are unsteady yo-yo bhaktas. Not like yo-yo bhakta, and not like yo-yo yum yum, but yo-yo bhakta. I mean, high, low, high, low. And so if you experience that, I think the obvious solution is going to be to find that position where you stop being a yo-yo. Get the yo-yo and then it spins, and hold it and it's spinning in the middle. Where can you get it? Well, it'll spin and it won't fall. Actually, yo-yos always fall, but you understand the idea. And if you have this perfectionist mentality, that's going to be hard to do because you want to be on the top. And wanting to be on the top is great, but whether you can actually be there now, that's what you have to determine. And so the hard part is to live your life on this level when you really want to be on this level. But all I can say is, if you don't live steadily on this level, you won't come to this level. And if you try to come to this level, you won't be able to stay. You'll always come down if it's above your ability. So when you see a devotee who's steady, generally they're comfortable in what they're doing in their service. They're comfortable in the level of austerity they're maintaining. It's not that they're not trying to increase, but they finally understood what is that point in which they can be steady. So I just wanted to emphasize steadiness. And the last thing I want to say is that it's very, very common that in order to be renounced, a devotee will neglect certain needs they have, or neglect to understand their, how should we say, neglect to understand their nature. And so they kind of repressed certain desires. And then at some point, those desires come out and they're not even prepared for them because they thought they had transcended them. And so if we become too renounced too soon, it can backfire. And that's when you get this, I'm just going to give up everything mentality. I tried, it didn't work. No, what you tried for didn't work because you tried for something by repressing yourself so much that eventually your desires came out, and then you thought, well, I must not be Krishna conscious because I have all these desires. Now, the problem was you never addressed those desires and how to engage them in the first place. Or maybe you didn't know them, or maybe you were preached to that this is all Maya and you should just, completely surrender, which we're all preached to pretty much. Or that's how we at least process it in the beginning of our devotional service. It's very common to process. Everything is Maya, which means everything, all my needs and desires are Maya. And I just want to engage fully in Krishna consciousness and forget everything, which is fine. That's, as a brahmachari, brahmacharini, that's basically what we do. But at some point, we have to stop and say, okay, for the long haul, who am I and what am I going to do? Then again, there's varnashram. What's your ashram? What's your varna going to be? What is your nature? What needs do you have that you put on hold as a brahmachari so you could focus on your preaching, which is great. Now, the sannyasis, they're pretty good at doing that their whole life. They're by nature renounced, probably from the past life. They already came in on that level. And so sometimes we look at that and we say, I want to be like that, but we have to be realistic. Can you be that way? So repression has caused a lot of devotees to leave Krishna consciousness because it's like they're shooting for something that's too high. And after years and years and years of struggling and trying and getting up every day and Hare Krishna, Krishna, and like one day they just crash and go, it's not working. the thing is, it is working, but if you're trying to jump 10 feet and it's your first day as a high jumper, you got to move the pole down to like 3 feet to learn how to do it. And there, there's this psychology. If the pole's at 3 feet and I jump over it, I feel like I accomplished something. I'm successful. But if the pole's at 6 feet and I crash into it, then I feel like I'm useless. So you have to understand this psychology. If you put the pole too high for yourself, you'll always crash into the pole, and you'll always feel like, well, I can't be Krishna conscious because I can't jump over the 6 or 10-foot pole. But you put it lower and you jump over it, and you go, oh, I can do that. That works. Okay, then put it up another half foot. Okay, I did that. Practice on that. Put it up. Practice. So gradually you put it up, and you're successful along the way. But what happens for a lot of devotees, they put the pole up super high, and they're just like, I'm going to keep crashing into that pole till I get it, So they're trying to jump and jump. And after so many years, it's like they never jumped high enough. And then they just give up. I go, what's the use? So these are just some things I've seen. So I'm sure you can relate to this. You've probably seen it or maybe seen it in your own self. So I'm going to go back to your comments. The comments were all the, I don't know if we want to call it controversy, but the comments and questions sometimes bring up the realities and difficulties of the issue we're talking about. So Ajanitai quotes Brahmabhuta Prasanatma. Nasochati nakangshati, devotee is an ocean of mercy, detached from distress and happiness. I don't know about the ocean of mercy. That's another verse. Brahmabhuta Prasanatma means on the Brahmabhuta platform you're happy. And Nasochati means you don't lament. And the Kangshati means you don't hanker. So that was in relation to this man doubting Arjun's level because he seemed to be lamenting. And then Prabhupada saying, no, he was steady. That's the sign of his pure devotion. No matter what happened, he fought. So we have to think like that. Okay, no matter what happens, I won't give up my service. I won't give up my sadhana. And certainly, sometimes in our life, something's going to happen that isn't great. That could throw us off. Okay. Jai says, your perfection is that you keep trying. That is brilliant and something many of us need to hear. Yeah. Well, last, maybe 2 weeks ago, one of the classes was about that. You're, defining success. If you ever use the word success, you have to define it in Krishna conscious terms, because Krishna conscious success is not necessarily you jumped over the 10-foot pole, but you jumped over the 3-foot pole and you jumped every day. And next week, 3.5 foot. Next week, 4 foot. Next week, 4.5 foot. Not that you couldn't jump over the 10-foot pole. So you had to redefine success. And even you couldn't jump over the 3-foot pole, but you kept practicing until you could. And your practice is your success. That's the point. So, yeah. I never saw Prabhupada chastise anyone for trying. Well, maybe if they made some huge mistake, practical mistake, but generally, he didn't. Okay. Gopinath says, food is a great way to overcome sadness, as long as it doesn't become your drug of choice for the rest of your life to overcome sadness. I think sweet rice with blueberries is a great way to overcome your misery. As long as it's offered. And it sounds funny, but I say that with seriousness, but what I meant was that sometimes we've seen devotees just take shelter in sense gratification. As this is the way out of my misery, is just to rev up the sense gratification. And there is some truth to it. You just don't rev it up too much. As I was saying, sometimes we repress ourselves, so our level of austerity is 10 foot, and we can't maintain it. And so in that sense, I need a little sense gratification. Like Prabhupada would say sometimes, like Grihastha ashram, it's like if you want sense gratification, go to Grihastha ashram. So what did he mean? Well, if your pole's 10 foot and you can't jump over it, then bring it down. So it's true. Bring it down. What does bring it down mean? A little more sense gratification. You have your own home. You make your own money. So you can get things you wouldn't get as a brahmachari. You can raise a family. You get a license for sex. A restricted license, but you get one. So that's what Prabhupada's saying. If you can't jump at 10 foot, bring it down. But don't bring it down so low. Don't bring it down to the point that there's too much sense gratification, and then it becomes a problem for the devotional service. That's the point. So it's true. Sometimes we renounce too much, and we're not ready for it. So Christe says, due to perfectionist tendencies, definitely I've had these problems and still do. But facing real life situations, the sharp corners get smoother. Real wisdom for real people, for sure. Maybe we should call it real wisdom to make real people. Well, maybe we call it real wisdom for people who want to be real. I think that's a good one. Perfectionism can be used for or against you. So it's not like we don't want to be perfect. We just don't want to become depressed if we're not perfect. So perfectionists, they have the good qualities that they like to do things well. They have the fault that if it doesn't come out perfectly, they become discouraged, sometimes give up, become depressed, angry, critical. Why aren't you doing that perfectly? What's wrong with you? And they become really critical of people who don't do things perfectly. They become critical of themselves for not doing things perfectly. They become critical of ISKCON because it's not perfect. Have you noticed? Am I the only one who noticed ISKCON's not perfect? Am I the only one who noticed devotees are not always perfect? Do you notice that also? Yeah, so for perfectionists, that's really difficult because their expectations for everyone and themselves is basically perfection. And sometimes people come to ISKCON after reading Prabhupada's books, and they think they wouldn't really know without being part of ISKCON, but they join ISKCON and they think, well, all the devotees are living exactly the way Prabhupada has explained in his books. That would make sense. I mean, you're a devotee. Prabhupada's your spiritual master or your grand spiritual master. And it would just, logically, you would think, oh, this is what everybody does, right? And then you join and you see, well, everyone's on different levels, so not everybody follows perfectly. And if you have this perfectionist mentality, you could easily get discouraged and say, well, I don't want to be part of ISKCON because there are people in ISKCON who don't live exactly the way Prabhupada wants them to live, and that's really discouraging. It's kind of like saying, I don't like this hospital. I need an operation. I don't like this hospital. Why? Because there's sick people in it. So, we're curing people. They're not coming cured. So yes, devotees are not perfect. And so if we want, they're perfect in a certain sense because they're giving their lives to Krishna. But in terms of their character, they're working on it. In terms of their devotion, they're working on it. So that's the curse of being a perfectionist. It's really, really, really difficult if you want everything perfect. I would recommend perfectionists go back to Godhead because then everything's perfect. But here, in the material world, if you're a perfectionist, it's like a curse. You're in a place where nothing's perfect and you want it to be perfect. I mean, what could be more of a curse than that? So then you have to be a realist and adjust to it. and accept the fact that you will not be as Krishna conscious as you want to be right today. And you just have to accept that. It's a reality. And other people will also not be. So, Krishna Karshani says, I believe you are aware. Excuse me. That there are initiated devotees who don't chant 16 rounds. Yeah, some chant 25, some chant 32. I'm aware of that. Yeah. That's not what she means. Less than 16. You mean less than 16. Yeah. Because if you don't chant 16, you could chant 64. I don't chant 16. Oh, disaster. No, I chant 64. That's also not chanting 16. So, yeah. I'm aware of some devotees who chant more than 16, definitely. The ones who chant less than 16, I'm not aware because they don't tell me. Only the ones who chant more than 16 tell me. I'm actually more aware of people who chant more than 16 than less. But anyway, Krishna Karshani, I'm having fun with her. She's saying, perhaps I'm aware that not all initiated devotees chant 16. And Krishna Karshani, yeah, I'm aware. Definitely aware. Some chant 16, but they miss a day here or a day there, or 12 one day, or I had a bad day yesterday. Sometimes I got so busy yesterday, I couldn't finish my rounds. So sometimes it happens, but then, I make it up. Today I make it up. I know devotees who are initiated and they chant nothing because chanting a few rounds makes them feel guilty. Interesting. Because few rounds they don't feel enough, so they chant nothing. I think we as a movement have to deal with initiated devotees who won't chant 16 and they want to still be devotees, and we cannot make them feel pressured. Yeah, it's what I would suggest is that in that case, they should approach their spiritual master if he's approachable, and tell him and say, can we negotiate another number, at least temporarily? And if that's not possible, then they should understand exactly what you said. Something is better than nothing. And rather than feeling guilty because I'm not doing 16, maybe I could feel good that I'm doing 4. All right, how can I feel good if I'm doing 4 if I vowed to chant 16? Yeah, I understand that. But 0 is not better than 4. But if I don't chant any, then I don't have to think about the fact that I'm not chanting 16. Krishna Karshani, I think you might remember that story I told when this counselor would tell people who weren't chanting 16, you don't have to chant if you don't want to. And what she did was, by saying that, it helped them look in their own heart and see if they really wanted to. And in many cases, they found that desire beyond the, I have to chant 16. She helped them find that I want to. And they started doing it again. So that may also be another strategy. For whatever reason, maybe they feel obligated, pressured. It's not natural. They don't really want, it's not coming, the motive is not coming from a genuine desire to chant, a real desire. Maybe it was like artificially pushed upon them. They always felt forced. So if you can help people find their own desire, say, well, you don't have to chant if you don't want to. That was your decision to take initiation. So, look at it that way. But also simultaneously to help them understand 4 is better than 0. 4 is 4 times better than 0. Well, it's 4 times better than 1. It's infinitely greater than 0. Anyway, we'll just say 4 is 4 times better than 0. 8 is 8 times better. 12 is 12. So, and then if we also talk to them about the bar at 10 feet, just bring it down to where you can do it. Because the point is, if they say, well, I could chant 3 or 4, but I feel guilty. But the point is, if they chant 3 or 4 every day, then there's the chance they'll chant 6 at some point, or 8 at some point. There's a chance it will go up. But if they chant 0, then there may be less of a chance that one day they wake up and say, okay, I'm tired of not chanting, I'll chant. I'm sure that happens, but probably more likely to happen if they maintain some level. And it will obviously be better for their Krishna consciousness. And as we know, some devotees 16 rounds, they probably don't even get 4 good rounds in the 16. So I can't say this without making a disclaimer. This is not to say you don't have to chant 16 rounds and your 16 rounds are useless, but I think we all know that sometimes out of the 16, we don't even get 4 good ones or 2 good ones or 1 good one some days. Some days we're lucky, we get all good ones. We're lucky, or we're doing things properly, but sometimes they're all bad. And so, chanting 4 good rounds, what's better, chanting 4 good rounds or 16 bad rounds? That's like saying, what's better, $4 or 16 counterfeit dollars? What's better, 4 ripe bananas or 4 overripe unedible bananas, or 16 unedible overripe bananas? So the quality of the chanting of 4 good rounds will have a lot, be very powerful, could be more powerful, or would be more powerful than 16 bad rounds. That's a philosophical reality, and it's a practical reality. It doesn't mean we're not supposed to chant 16 rounds because we chant 16 bad. I could chant 4 good, but if I chant 16, they're all going to be bad. Some devotees say that, but Prabhupada wanted us to master 16, so the goal is to chant 16 good rounds. But just factually speaking, 16 really, really bad rounds, it's 4 good rounds will help you more than 16 bad rounds. So these are things that we can understand if we become slack. Okay, so the next comment is by Krista, and it gives you a link to finding your Dharma. And there should be somewhere within that a sheet that asks you questions that will help you understand more about yourself. Okay, Krishna question, he says, what about devotees, male and female, who have desire to get married, but they rather should not do it because they will make potential wife or husband miserable? Others just see that those persons are messed up. Yeah. Well, there's a devotee I was just speaking to. He has a course he teaches, and it's just for women. And the course is how to be a good wife. But it actually has nothing to do with how to deal with a husband. It has to do with themselves, how to be more self-satisfied, more stable, etc., how to be happier. So that is important, because the problem is, we're always doing these, do the chart, see if they're compatible, and then you get like this ultra compatible couple, and it doesn't work out. And they're wondering why. Or you get this ultra uncompatible couple, and it works out, more or less. It's okay. They stay together. Maybe not the 2 happiest people you've ever seen, but they're okay. They stay together. And that super compatible couple, which were like in heaven, the first week they met, and you see them a few years later, and they look like they're really unhappy, and lots of problems. It could be, or often is, because one or both of them has emotional issues that make it very difficult for them to have healthy relationships. So although otherwise they're compatible, the emotional issue gets in the way. They have like huge expectations for the other person, expectations a person could never meet, or they become codependent. They can't be happy unless the other person is doing A, B, and C for them every day. And so many other things that you're probably more aware of than I am. That can, excessive low self-esteem. Then you depend on your partner to build you up, And if you have two people with low self-esteem, they're depending on one another to build one another up, and then it's really, really difficult. So it is true. If you have some personal problems, expectations, or high levels of intolerance, or, it could be so many things. So I always suggest for everybody, even if you're a normal person, before you enter a marriage, just, become more self-aware so that you don't allow your own personal challenges to cause you to blame the other person for what you should be working on yourself, because that's ultimately what happens. I blame you for something that's actually my problem. And it's because I had this expectation or this particular weakness that I was needing you or depending on you to do something, which I should have done myself. And now I'm blaming you for not doing it. So these kinds of things. And so you take this compatible couple and someone has issues that create relationship challenges, and then they have a bad relationship. So yes, that's a very good point. But I often tell people that. They say, I want to get married. I say, are you qualified to be married? It's like saying, I want to start a business. Well, what do you know about business? I want to become a this or that. Well, what do you know about it? Are you trained to do it? And so in ordinary life, it makes sense, right? I want to become a this or that. Okay, I'll go to school and get trained. I was just thinking yesterday, I don't know why I was thinking of this. Like this was watching something. And I was thinking, there should be courses in school that everyone has to take about marriage because the divorce rate is so high. And there should be courses in school that help people become more emotionally mature. Because if people understood what marriage is, they understood the mood and mentality of the opposite sex and how to deal with them, and they had more emotional maturity, there would be better relationships. So I think it's a very good point. Whatever you're going to do, become qualified, and especially when you want to get married. But most people, what's the qualification for being married? Falling in love or falling in lust, depending on what you fell into. That becomes the main criterion. Why are you marrying her or him? Well, he's funny, makes me laugh, makes me feel good, he's got big muscles, he's handsome. It's not the criteria. It may be a partial criteria, but are you ready to be married? Are you qualified to be that man's wife? You want to be initiated. Are you qualified to be a disciple? You're always looking for who's the best guru, the guru that inspires me, the guru, this or that. Well, hello, what about you? Are you qualified? You want to find the ultimate guru? Are you qualified to be the disciple of the ultimate guru? That's a better way of thinking. I want to marry this woman. I want to marry this man. Great. Become qualified. I always tell devotees who are looking for a spouse and they can't find one, I say, I think maybe the more important than looking for one is become qualified to be one. And then Krishna sees you're qualified, then he'll send somebody who you would be qualified to marry. I think that's another powerful strategy. But a lot of people enter marriage and they're not qualified, and they become qualified in the process after creating hell, literally, in the relationship. As a means of survival, they have to go into counseling or maybe even go into therapy if they really have serious problems. That should have done before. Definitely before. Yeah. So, good point, Krishna Karshan. Marco says, thank you for sharing your experience with us. It's going to help us a lot to analyze ourselves. Each of us has talents that may well be hidden. It may take half the time of your life before you find your Swadharma. Yeah. You're supposed to actually find out when you're in Gurukula. We're starting a little late, Marco. It's supposed to happen in Gurukula. It's so interesting. This verse in the Bhagavad Gita, Krishna says, do your dharma, don't do someone else's dharma. To do someone else's dharma is dangerous. That's an interesting verse. What's Krishna referring to? Well, he's referring to Arjuna doing the dharma of a brahmana. And so naturally, our material side thinks, well, Krishna is saying, even if you could do it perfectly, you shouldn't do it. That doesn't make sense. Why should I not do something if I could do it perfectly? Well, just because you can do it perfectly doesn't actually mean you're qualified. Like we give the example, it probably gives the example. A teacher has to have Brahminical qualifications, cleanliness, tolerance, sense control, and so forth. So he could perfectly teach a subject, but not have the qualification of a teacher, because by nature he may be of another varna. So even though he can perfectly teach, he shouldn't do it, because ultimately it will create havoc, or at least in a proper culture, the teachers have to be exemplary people, have to be like priests, basically. Teachers are kind of like priests in a sense. So that's what Krishna means. Don't do another's dharma. Another thing that Krishna means is that you ultimately can't steadily do another person's dharma if it's not your nature, because you will always act according to your nature. And so Krishna is saying it just creates problems. So it behooves us to find out our dharma and use that in Krishna's service. Shravaniya says, sometimes the reason people are unsteady is the problem of not having their own house, or sufficient financial situation. So that's an ashram problem. I used to be very unsteady without the above, and I was very surprised when my so-called external situation changed, and I became steady, peaceful, and satisfied. And the only reason why it really changed was that I opened my heart to Krishna and asked him to help me. Suddenly, things which were very difficult became very easy. Krishna provided what we lacked. And also, for women, for many, children is a physiological, biological, psychological need that if they try to repress or avoid, or sometimes rationalize away with philosophy, that it's just a problem, and it's going to affect my sadhana and so much work and this and that. They're repressing a deep need that they have, that most women have. And once they have children, then they see, oh yeah, that's why I was so crazy. I thought I was crazy. Everybody said I was crazy, but actually I just needed, to be a mother and a wife, and now everything's fine. So, thank you, Shavaniya, for that. It's true. Just yesterday, I was dealing with a devotee, a similar situation, having doubts about having children. You know why she had doubts about having children? She heard too many classes from sannyasis about the horrors of grihastha life. So she had all these doubts. But I know that she wants to have children. I know that'll be good for her. But she had all these doubts. And when I read those doubts, I thought it's really sad that we would make women doubtful about raising a family, which is so natural for them, and can be so problematic if they don't. Now, if you're very renounced, it's like you don't need so many things. But until you're on that level, there's certain things you need. And like Shravaniya says, if you don't have them, you'll be unsteady. And once you have them, you'll be steady. Like like I have my home, I have my family, my husband, my children, this, that, things I need, things I want. There's no reason to be unsteady now other than just gross doses of Maya, trying to pull me away from Krishna. But in terms of material facility, Varna and Ashram, there's no reason. And generally, when the Varna and Ashram are healthy, then you're steady, generally. Always exceptions, because you may not be living your ashram properly. So now everyone's going to get married tomorrow after this class, right? And on Wednesday, you'll all say, hey, I just got married on Tuesday. Everything's great. Krishna Karshani says, what if somebody knows their dharma, but his or her life situation is not letting him or her to fulfill it. Of course, tolerance is required in that situation, but I would question. First thing I would ask them is, well, what do you have to do to be able to fulfill it? And can you start working towards it slowly, slowly, slowly? Because if you can, it will pay off lots of dividends in the future, because you'll finally be able to do what most inspires you, and you will see how it helps you. And it will help many people, because when you're inspired, naturally people around you get inspired, and you can offer them a lot more than if you're not inspired. So I don't know the exact situations. It's hard to just speak generally. I was in that situation for many years, and I always thought, how can I do this? And the realization that I had was, I had a business, and I'm not really inclined for business, but I needed to do something to support my family. And then at some point I thought, I chose this business, I thought, because, well, it's easy to do, it's a way to make money, and I set it up. I said to myself, and I had been studying this also about creating a different life. How do you get out of your circumstances and create what you want? And so then I began thinking, well, I created this other life, and I wasn't really conscious when I was creating it of where it would end up. And I wasn't conscious that I could actually create something that's more in line with my dharma that would also make money. I didn't realize, I didn't know. Either I didn't realize it, or I think it was more, I didn't know how to do it. And then when I started to understand that I could do it, and I did have different options, then I told myself, well, you created this business, and it's not the business you want. So why don't you just create the business you like? Because everything in your life, ultimately, you're making decisions. And so then I thought, well, how could I create it? So it started with that assumption. So if you have that assumption that I've created the life I have now, if it's not exactly the way I want it, I could create differently, but I have to start thinking how to do that. So it has to begin with that faith that I can create something better. And that's how it always is. And I'm sure there's so many people in the world that feel the same way, that I don't have a way out of my life the way it is. But you'll find that the people who got themselves out of that rut that they were in did it because they knew they really didn't have to accept the life that they were living. They could make choices and look at things differently, so that they could work their way into a new dharma, or work their way into being more successful at what they're doing, or whatever it is they want to do. So that would be my general advice, based on my own experience, and based on what I've studied on this topic, and based on what I've seen other people do. Now, of course, some people don't have that nature to break out of the mold and do that. I understand that. And so if that's the case, or circumstantially there's nothing else they can do, then they have to find something in their life that inspires them. So if it's not your occupation, then when you come home, let's say you like to write or paint or do music or whatever it is, so you do that when you come home. It's not going to be the way you make money, but it shouldn't be neglected. So that's my realization of that. Enthusiasm and determination are two great friends of the sadhaka. Sincerity in his dress and humility in his ornamental jewel. Yeah, enthusiasm and determination. So often, the point of this class is often that enthusiasm and determination are byproducts of being in the right varna and ashram. Ajay Nitai says, how to develop the taste to build the steadiness. Sometimes I want rounds to finish quickly. I don't know if steadiness is a taste. It's more of a duty. It's more of a I think the answer is, just what I'm talking about in this class. But you're talking about steadiness and sadhana, and I was talking about steadiness more in terms of service or overall Krishna consciousness. Um, Sometimes, if let's say you're using the example, you want to finish your rounds quickly and do other things, it's probably a little too much passion. In cases like that, we need to take time to understand and appreciate the practices. And so we don't rush through them ritualistically and just do them for the sake of doing them. So the more you understand that, then the less you'll have that problem. The more you understand Krishna consciousness, the more deeply you go into it, the easier it's going to be. The more you understand the philosophy behind chanting, why it's important, why sadhana is important, all these things, then the easier it's going to be to do it. Right? So if you're trying to be steady in Krishna consciousness without some level of realization that comes from fairly in-depth understanding of our philosophy, it's going to be hard. And Maya will come and just convince you otherwise. Prakash Vashwani is asking me to repeat what I said. I can't remember the context. Prabhupada, just like Krishna blank steadiness. Maybe it was like Prabhupada stressed steadiness, just like Krishna stressed it. One of the reasons Prabhupada had to stress steadiness is because we as his disciples were often, let's just say, not as grounded as he would have liked us to be. And so things threw us off. Things could disturb us that he wished wouldn't disturb us. Maya would affect us in ways he would have hoped she wouldn't have. We had tendencies, at least some of us, to be irresponsible in our duties, in our varnas, in our ashrams. And so we look at Krishna consciousness like, right now, how am I doing? And Prabhupada was looking at it more like, do this, and by the end of your life, you'll be Krishna conscious. But I want to do this so I get it right now. So for us, that was difficult sometimes. Tendency to be irresponsible, not seeing that by being responsible throughout my life, I would mature as a person, and that would be necessary for my Krishna consciousness. We just wanted to do it now with results now. So that's important to see. Okay, if I take the time to chant properly, if I take the time to understand Krishna consciousness more deeply, then if I do that over a period of time, it's going to have an effect. And I may not see that effect immediately, but 50 years from now, I'll see the effect. So that was how Prabhupada was seeing it. I got married and I thought, well, this isn't really good for my spiritual life. If I were a sannyasi, that would be better. And Prabhupada's saying, no, first master the grihastha ashram. That's the process. First you master that ashram, and then you'll be ready for sannyas. Not like you give up your responsibility in the grihastha ashram, and giving up your responsibility becomes your qualification for sannyas. No, you become steady, and then you show, after 25 years of being steady as a grihastha, okay, now we can trust you to be steady as a sannyasi. That was how Prabhupada saw it. So it's like, I want to do it now. I'm 22 or 24. I want to take sannyas now. And Prabhupada's saying, no, maybe when you're 50, if you showed us that you can be steady as a grihastha and tolerate whatever you have to tolerate to do it, then when you're 50, we can talk about sannyas because you've shown. So, we have to understand. Do your 16 rounds, understand what they are, get into it, appreciate it, and do that steadily. And over time, you're going to see things will change. So steadiness is very powerful because we have to look at Krishna consciousness as a lifelong project, not like immediately what's happening, like how am I doing immediately, but how am I doing now, and then project that into the future. If I do this now, what will the future look like? And try to understand that if you're not jumping over the 10-foot pole, but you're only jumping over the 3-foot pole, but if you do that steadily, gradually you can raise the pole, and when you're 50, you can jump over the 10-foot pole. Some can jump over it now, but that's the exception. And if you're not the exception, you'll get frustrated trying to be the exception when you're not. And if you're not the exception, then it's going to take you 25 years to jump over the 10-foot pole. Whereas that brahmachari, he's jumping over it now, and that becomes frustrating for you because you think, something wrong with me, I should be able to do it. But if you can't do it, you can't do it. It's just a reality, and you'll have to, it may take you 25 years of practice to be able to do it, and then we have to accept that. So I don't know if that helped, but that's something. How to know what pace of practice is appropriate, not to have too much expectation. Sometimes you will need guidance from someone else who knows you. Otherwise, if you meditate on what I said, it will help you in this class. And then just kind of observe yourself and observe your nature. And sometimes it takes a level of self-honesty that not a lot of us have. But sometimes the problem is, especially if you're a young devotee, it's really hard to understand what you're capable of, because you're coming out of the material world and you're going into Krishna consciousness, and you have a lot of force in it because you're getting away from material life and you're really relishing Krishna consciousness. And sometimes it may seem that you're actually more Krishna consciousness than you are. Usually after 5 to 10 years in practicing Krishna consciousness, it starts to become obvious where to put that pole. In the beginning, everyone puts the pole at 10, and it just keeps crashing, but they keep trying, because the pole at 10 is, that's the goal, pure devotional service. And it's not that at any point in our life we don't know that the goal is to put it at 10 feet. But after a while, you start to realize, it's been 5 years and I can't do this 10-foot pole. Then you start thinking, well, what can I do? And you put it at 5 and you jump over it and you go, I can do 5. You put it 6, no, I crash into it. Okay, 5, I can do 5 right now. So sometimes you understand it that way. I think it's invaluable to discuss your situation with senior devotees, because they know all this. They've been through it. They've gone through that stage where they were trying for the 10-foot pole, and it didn't work. And so they can kind of help you. But I think there's also an advantage in that most of us who were going for the 10-foot pole were living in temples. And it seemed like living in a temple, you could do it. And I think a lot of people who live outside know that they can't do the 10-foot pole. And you might say, well, why did you think you could do the 10-foot pole living in the temple? Well, you're only surrounded by devotees. You have 4 to 5 hours, 6 hours of sadhana every day, and you have service all day. So in that environment, it's really hard to tell where you're at, because you're surrounded by this force that's just keeping you in Krishna consciousness. Whereas if you join outside, you're living alone, you don't have that so much, so it's a little easier. But I would just say, as a caution, just question. If whatever level you think you're on, you may think you're on a lower level also than you can be. So that's also another problem. Just question it. Just ask yourself, could I be better than I am? Or am I on a level that I don't know if I can be steady? Is this artificial for me? Is this ashram? Is this varna? Is this really artificial? And like Krishna Karshani was asking, he said, if you want to enter an ashram or you want to enter a varna, then it should be the ashram and varna that you're most naturally suited for. And then you should become educated in that varna and ashram, how to do it. And do it well. Okay, a few more questions. Overtime today. Mark, I don't know if that answers your question properly, but I would say if you can get association with older devotees, people like 50 and older, of course, maybe you're 50, I don't know. But if you're 50, probably by now you would be understanding your nature. But if you're a new devotee and 50, then also it's hard. And try to get senior devotee guidance. You know, what should I do? What's my nature? What do you think is the best varna and ashram and so forth? What do I need to know about those ashrams like that? When in a situation when a devotee, after taking initiation, realized they took vows that are too difficult for him or her to follow, he or her just realized it was not real and thought that was higher than it really is. Yeah, well, it's not ideal, but it's a reality that happens, and we have to make some adjustment. So if that's the situation, you make an adjustment. Don't give up Krishna consciousness. Just adjust, and then work your way through that adjustment to eventually, at some point, do something that could eventually bring you as close as possible to following your vows. Does that mean we follow other people by taking initiation, but at the same time not able to keep the vow? They're worried to approach devotees thinking people will make fun of them. So complicated. Not sure what you're saying. Didn't understand. We follow other people by taking initiation at the same time. Well, don't take initiation if you can't keep a vow. I can address the second one. I'm not sure, but you mentioned they're worried to approach devotees thinking people will make fun of them. That's unfortunate. Approach someone that will be confidential and will not judge you. And then open up to that person. I don't know if that's what you're asking, but that's the answer. If that's not the answer you're looking for, ask again. Krishnangi says, I love our japa sessions. I'm waiting for them so much. Great. This time together is really helping me. So we have japa sessions every day at 11 o'clock Eastern Standard Time. And she's talking about those japa sessions. Yeah, it's nice because we get to, most of us are alone. She's alone where she's living. So she likes that. Brian says, nurse didn't show up today. Gotta go. Mason up and started feeding. Thank you so much. Okay. Sounds like, Brian, you're a mother. But thanks for attending. Jessica says, I've noticed that some devotees who live in or near the temples don't chant all 16 rounds, but they are the ones who perform the most practical service. Cooking and cleaning, they keep with for years. They even seem to love serving the deities. And forgetting their own needs, that causes me a lot of admiration. Yeah. So I think like the work of Satyanandan Swami and Burijan Prabhu in helping people with their japa is really invaluable. And the books they've written and my japa affirmations, and I think this is really important because the point you're making is it's a reality that a lot of devotees have not got to this point where they really like chanting japa, where they really relish it. It's a chore for them, like almost like a ritual. And so with the help and guidance of senior devotees who have gone deeper into the holy name, not just those three, there's so many devotees who are teaching about the holy name, it can be really, really helpful for us. So it's important. This particular activity for many is not as relishable as it can be and it should be. So it's just a reality. And yes, you have admiration. They're steady but this is something that needs to be worked on, for sure, for all of us. Christe, you said, is there any literature you would recommend regarding this? Does this mean how to be a better person, a better husband, better wife? There's so many good books on that. The 7 Principles to Make Marriage Work. That's the course my wife teaches. It's also the name of a book, something like that. That's a very good book. And in terms of personal issues, it depends what the issue is, but there's solutions for all problems. Some of them are directly in Krishna consciousness. Some of them may require some outside sources. Reshma says, if you are steady in your grihastha ashram, be steady in sannyas. How lovely. Oh, well, it was Prabhupada said it, not me. And he said it to me. That's why I know. Prabhupada's point was responsibility. Like, if you're irresponsible as a grihastha, how can I give you sannyas? How can I be sure that you'll be responsible as a sannyasi if you're giving up your responsibility as a grihastha? You have to prove yourself. Yeah. Vikash Vashwani, 4 rounds, good ones. It's a connection issue. Yeah. So, I don't like to say 4 good rounds are better than 16 bad rounds, because it sounds like I'm making a concession, and everybody, everyone who listens to my classes only chants 4 rounds. They chant 4 good rounds instead of 16 bad rounds. Well, actually, that would be better. But Prabhupada wanted us to chant 16 good rounds, so that's the goal. So we have to remember that also. Yeah, we want KC to be a lifelong process. So I think that's a good point. Brian's with me. Okay. Brian's listening, but now he has to go. All right. Everyone needs a good husband like that. So, yeah, I think this is a good point. If you look at Krishna consciousness as a lifelong practice and think, how am I going to do it so that I can be successful lifelong? Then I think a lot of what I'm saying will become more clear. So thanks for sharing that, Marco, or maybe clarifying what I was saying that could put it more succinctly, as a lifelong practice. What I need to do so that I can be steady throughout my life and successful at the end. When you were speaking about your shift from business to full-time preaching, and any books on it, it's more... It is basically what we would call self-development. Any books on self-development will always teach you that if you don't intentionally work towards something, then by your conditioning, you just end up in a situation, or by circumstance. So that's the basis of it. In any kind of self-development teaching, that's the basis of it, that you have to decide what you want to do. You have to visualize it. You have to feel it. You have to be inspired to do it, of course. You shouldn't decide to do something that doesn't inspire you. And you have to have confidence that you can do it, and then you have to have a practical plan how you do it, which could mean reading books on how to achieve whatever it is you want to achieve. But any book on self-development will help you just understand. But what I just explained is a basic principle, and probably there are lots of classes in which I explain that. But, it also hinges on having the belief that you can do it. And I think another thing that I thought was that I was looking at what I was doing, and I knew, well, this is not really what I should be doing. Not Varna-wise, or not because of my service to Prabhupada. It's not the best way I could serve him. So, I thought about the ramifications of both choices, and the choice to be more Brahmanical and figure out how I could do that full time. It was perfect. It just made all the sense in the world to me based on my nature. And the other choice seemed to be a dead end, because I knew anyway I couldn't do it my whole life because I had no energy to do it. People who like business, they can do it their whole life. They can do it for lifetimes. So I think if you come if you come to this point where you realize, I could do this for lifetimes, then I would just suggest to you that do whatever you have to do to build the faith and confidence that you can actually make that shift, whether it's reading books on making a shift or just general self-development, altering your beliefs, whatever it is. And then learning practically how to do such things. You know, it's like, I love to teach. All right, well, start practicing it, or, you know, take a teacher training course, or, you know, just start doing it. I did a video the other day, or it came out the other day, and I was saying how when you want to make a shift, really, once you're clear on what it is, aside from everything else I said, you begin by just working on something, right? So let's say, Christe, you want to become, what do you want to become? You want to become, okay, I don't know what you want to become. You probably don't, you may not know what you want to become. So, but let's say you want to become a teacher, right? So then what could you do today, one little thing to bring you closer to the goal? What could you do tomorrow, the next day? So you just do something each day. Okay, I'm going to today investigate where, you know, this course that devotees teach, teacher training, where can I take that online, you know? Oh, tomorrow I'm going to sign up. You know, next day I'm going to begin the course. I'm doing something to get closer to the goal. So anytime you decide what your goal is, the next question to ask yourself is, what am I doing today that's getting me closer to that goal? Or you might decide, I want to teach, so on my Facebook, I'm just going to turn it on and teach. And probably nobody is going to watch, or I'll have one student. But I need to learn, and this is how I'll learn. Every day I'm going to give a class for 10 minutes on Facebook. And I'll tell my friends if you want. And I'm going to study something, and you can give me feedback. You know, you're doing something. And once you start doing something, you'll see it moves you towards your goal. If your job is bad, what can I do today to improve? What can I do tomorrow? I do something like that. So I think that's important. Japa session. No, I will join the Japa session every day at 11 Eastern Standard Time. I think Anuradha is going to start it. Anuradha will start the Japa session earlier at 10. Correct? For those who want to join. I actually might join earlier today because I have to make up a little bit for yesterday. Quality over quantity in japa is always a concern, but it is not as a sadhaka stage. We need to focus more on fixed quantity. No, both. It's not one or the other. don't make the distinction. You know, 16 bad rounds is, you know, doesn't get you back to Godhead. But if you've, you know, it's great that you're chanting 16, you've made that vow, but it doesn't get you back to God. Actually, Anuradha, I can't join at 10. I have to do something and send it out this morning before 11. Oh, okay, so we'll end class here. Thank you all for attending. I hope that helped you. I hope you're not more confused than when I started. Sometimes, you know, an hour and a half is not enough to like get very practical and get you, you know, to practically start working on what we've said. So all I can suggest is if anything made sense in this class, try to put it, try to apply it and do something practical. Because in a workshop, that's what I would do. I would say, okay, let's take this practically, you know, where, you know, the exercise, I would say, where is your, where does your pole go? Where do you want to put your pole? And what does that look like according to Varna and Ashram and the level of sadhana and so forth? Where does your pole go? So that would be the exercise from this course. Okay?